Hey everyone, just a quick disclaimer before this video starts. I have basically took up a new format kind of where I make the scene first and then do the tutorial in it. And I publish everything I make, including the before and after of this scene. So after the tutorial is done, I save and publish that, and I also publish the beforehand so you can follow along in the same scene. And just like a Media Molecule tutorial, you can do following the steps basically and build alongside with me. Also, want to shout out again, I just started Patreon, got a couple of patrons already, and we have been, you know, tingling in this private server I got. I've also invited quite a few big names in the Dreams community, like the Mad GFX crew, some very active people from the Dreams Discord, and I'd be back a few other Dreams creators. So if you are looking for a server like that, I got one. Just gotta become a Patreon supporter, you know. Got a link in the description. You know, just help me out a little bit. I don't know. Alright, well, video's about to start. Have fun. Bye. Hello everyone, back again. Today we're going to be doing UI and menus and stuff like that. So I thought the best example to use this with would be our player customization. If you didn't do this, that's fine. I have this scene published as remixable, so you can go ahead and hop in and start from there. Even if you don't understand most of this, it's pretty simple to use because of the way we set it up last time. So over here we have our motherboard, and these are variables for our character here. So we want to be able to modify these in a menu, and also I want to go over how to make like sub menus and stuff like that. So first of all, we're probably going to get started on like the actual menu. There's a couple of ways we can do this, depending on your use case, but I want to be able to open the menu like as the player and then like be able to see the face on the screen so we can customize it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and make a new microchip on our Puppet logic here. And I think, hold on, it's in logic and processing. I was just wondering if I had remixed the scene if I was editing it directly, but I remembered. So we're gonna go ahead and get out a microchip from our logic and processing in our gadgets menu. I'm gonna go ahead and name it UI or just pause menu. Pause menu works because we're gonna have sub menus. And you don't have to have this in like a Puppet logic. You could have this anywhere if you have like a wireless controller sensor. In order to get a wireless controller sensor, I think that's what we're going to do. In this, we're not going to use this one directly, but we're going to use a wireless one. So we're going to go ahead and go into sensors and input in our gadgets menu. We're going to get the controller sensor. And then in this, we're going to go ahead and delete the wires coming out of it. So we just have this base gadget. And then you open up the properties panel, and the second to last page is important properties. And here you can control like how it's possessed, if it's possessable at all, and if it follows the imp and stuff like that, force possess it, how the like imp interacts with it, like if the eyes pop up or the cursor does. So what we do here is we can make it so it's remote controllable for possession mode, and that will allow us to get the input from this even if we are, for example, not possessed here, or if we're forcing the controls of this to turn off for cutscene purposes or any other reason. So now that we have this, we're going to be able to make our menu system. So since this is a pause menu and we'll have like multiple sub-menus or different screens, for example, what you want to do is you want to get a switch from your gadgets logic and processing menu. Or a selector, I mean, not a switch. Selector. And this is basically what allows you to select a different menu or display a different menu. And you can have submenus within menus, so we'll get to that in a second. But if we go ahead and open the property panels of this, we can select at the very top the number of ports. And this is going to be how many menus are on our main menu that we can like just scroll through, like with L1 and R1 or any other control you want. If you want a menu that opens within a menu, then you would use another selector in that microchip, not this one. So we're going to have at least 2 screens. There's just going to be a pause menu, and then there's going to be a actual customization menu. So what we're going to do here is, what we want is to actually, first of all, we want to be able to open and close our menu. So we're going to get a signal manipulator from our gadgets menu in this logic and processing section. And this is going to be our toggle. So if we go ahead and open up the properties for this, again, we don't really care about most of this. We just want to go over the custom remapper. You don't have to see any of this except for edge mode. On the very end here is toggle output and on, which means when this receives a signal, it will turn on. And then when it loses the signal, it will stay on. And then when it receives the signal again, it'll turn off. So we can go ahead and open up our controller sensor. And the very consistent thing for menus is the touchpad button. Thankfully, we have access to that. We don't really have access to the options button, so that's going to be our best bet, is the touchpad. So that's going to go ahead and turn on and off our menu. And what we can do from here is we can actually have this turn on and off our selector. So basically, when we open the menu, this will be able to output power to our actual menu screens. And when it's turned off, it'll turn off, and it'll remember the state, I believe. So the menu will stay the same every time you open it. If you don't want that, you'd probably have to come up with a bit more complicated system that would reset stuff, I believe. It's not really that easy to explain. Probably a NOT gate hooked up to this, and then it would go into the inputs for all the selectors and stuff that you have in your menus and your submenus and etc. So what you would want now is, let's just make a basic pause menu that has like an option to quit and an option to resume. So what we're going to do is we're going to get a microchip, and this is going to be our just default pause. And I'm going to go ahead and use the film strip icon for both of our things here. So both of our microchips, our pause microchip and then the entire like heads-up display pause menu microchip. And we're going to go ahead and plug in output A into the power here. And just for, that's for when we're finished editing it, so we probably want to leave it unwired for now, so we're actually able to see everything properly. So our pause menu, let's do something really simple. We're going to go ahead and get a text displayer from our movers and output section, and this is really useful. It doesn't just have to display text, it can display like background elements and all sorts of stuff. So you can make really anything with text displayers, which is what we're going to be building most of our elements on our screen out of, is text displayers. So we're going to go ahead and, let's see here, we have a text box, so we're going to have just pause or paused pop up. And I don't want a border, but I want the background, and I don't want it curved. Let's give it about 50% opacity, maybe some brightness to it. Then I'm going to go to the alignment page, center it, and I'm going to put it up high a bit. Alright. And what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to make it so when we're going to make a copy of this controller sensor from the pause menu thing. So we're going to be able to get unique inputs from here. So only if this menu is open and if we press something, something will happen. So for example, we are going to want to probably switch between these, like using L1 and R1, because we're going to have submenus. So if you didn't have submenus, you could just use this controller sensor to switch the inputs on the selector, but since we're going to have submenus, it's going to be easier if we just wire up the controller sensor directly to the previous microchip selector. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And let's see here. We're going to open up the controller sensor's property panel, and we want L1 and R1 output because that's going to be the one that moves between the selections. So L1 is going to go ahead and move us to the previous output, and R1 is going to go ahead and move us to the next output. Now that doesn't really matter right now because we only have 2 selections on the selector, but if you have a lot more menus, you're going to want more. You're going to want it hooked up that way, so L1 goes to the previous menu, and then R1 goes to the next. Alright, and pause. What do we want here? We want a resume option, and we also want a, let's see here, we want a resume option and a quit option. Let's do that. So what we're going to want is another text displayer, and we're going to go ahead, and one cool thing about text displayers is you can actually get like icons from the game and also emojis and stuff like that. So in order to get icons from the game, you start with greater than, I believe, no, less than, yeah, the less than sign as seen on the screen, and then you can go ahead and type in what you want it to be. So we're gonna do X to get a select option. So X is going to be our option here, and we want this to continue or play, unpause works, anything like that. And we're going to go ahead and move this down, and you can go ahead and either select or open the properties of other text panels in order to get them to appear on the screen, or you can play time. It just depends on what you have open. So X is going to go ahead and unpause for us, and then we're going to do, let's say, triangle to quit. Now you could do this with a dialog text displayer. However, dialog text displayers aren't as versatile, and they're also really big and bulky when you want to have lots of options. So this isn't actually the best method, what I'm doing here. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do this, and then I'll show you how to do the better method, which I like because it's more of a selector rather than just you know, button displays. So we have unpause, quit, and what we're going to do here is literally just take the same controller outputs here, and they would go triangle quits. So in order to quit a game, you want to go ahead and go to gameplay gear, and you get a doorway, and a doorway will act as a way to exit. So you can either exit or entrance, or two-way for a doorway, but in this case, since we're quitting, we just want triangle. Okay, and then from here, X would unpause. So remember that toggle we had earlier? You can just do X from our controller sensor here, and that can go to the signal manipulator here. And since I have this open and turned on, we can actually do it since it's remote controllable. But we want to do a selection method, so I'm going to go ahead and delete those wires that we just made. And I'm going to go ahead and just delete the button prompts from these text displayers. And what we're going to do here is we're going to make it so we can actually select these with the D-pad. So what we want is a selector, and this is going to get us to like different menus. In fact, I think we're going to do a options menu as well from here, just so we can get that sub-menu out of the way and have it actually do something. I was planning on having a sub-menu that was just like a debug menu and just was there for no reason. So having an options menu is a better idea, I guess I could say. So one cool thing that we can do here is that we can animate these options to either highlight or be dim. So by default we want them to be dimmed, and then when they're selected, we are going to highlight them by increasing the text box opacity and increasing text box brightness. You can do this of one of two ways. You can either just directly hook up the output of the selector into the options in the text displayer if you just want to do one of these, or if you want it to look ridiculous. Or you can set the input here to be multiplied. So this option here, instead of overwrite, you'd set it to modulate. And then whatever you set this to, when it's selected, it would go to that value, but when it's not selected, it would go to 0. So what we want is, I want to animate them, because that is, in my opinion, cleaner. Because it only takes up one wire, and it's just an extra gadget each. So I'm going to go ahead and go to our animate menu in our assembly menu, and then we're going to get a keyframe. I'm going to go ahead and place that down, and then I'm going to copy it 3 times. Or 2 times, actually. We want 3 keyframes. And then for our first keyframe, that's going to be the unpause being selected. So we're going to go ahead and increase the text box brightness by 1, and then move up the opacity to 50%. And we're going to do the same thing with the other 2 keyframes and the other 2 text displayers. Alright, and now that we have that, we can actually hook up the keyframes to the selector. Alright, and now that we have the keyframes hooked up to the selector, we're going to go ahead and we want to actually display the D-pad or something like that to show that we can, you know, move up and down. So one thing that we can do is we can either animate it or we can just put it next to the paused. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it so it is animated with our keyframes. So I'm going to go ahead and get another text displayer. Actually, I think I'm going to just kind of copy the paused one. And I don't want the background. And we're going to get this one is a kind of complicated one. We did this on the shop tutorial. It's UI control D-pad up down. And that gives us that little icon there. Yeah, so now with this icon, we want it to be next to the options. So what we're going to do is we're going to have these keyframes here animate the position of this text displayer. And this is particularly useful for more advanced UI options. So when we get to those, you'll see how it's useful to be able to animate the position of things. So we're going to go ahead and get the first one. I'm going to go ahead and select or open up the text displayer for unpause so we can see the position. And I also want, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording actually, because I want to get the horizontal alignment to be custom, because then we can move it to the left to the unpause thing. So now I'm going to go ahead and animate it now, and then I'm going to animate the position. So it's right next to it. Alright, and once you have that, I'm going to go ahead and animate it for the next position. Alright, so then we're going to animate it for the last position as well. And now, I believe, you're going to be able to see it go up and down when we get the next part set up, which is the D-pad control. That's pretty simple. Just open up the controller sensor we have in here, and we're going to go ahead and use the up button and the down button output. So up is going to be our previous, because that's going to go up, and the first input is our highest one, and then down is going to go to the next output, which is going to go down in our list, so that's going to be down. Alright, now we should have a pause menu that you're able to select the options here, but they don't particularly do anything right now, but that's fine. Let's just see how it looks. Well, we need to actually set up the output of the selector here. And now we can go to the next option. And of course, our puppet is able to move around, but we can fix that in a moment here. Alright, so now that we have that, we actually want these options to do something now. So what we can do is we're going to go ahead and hook up AND gates. And these AND gates are going to listen for our controller sensor input, and they're also going to listen for the selector. So go ahead and get 3 AND gates from a logic and processing section of our guidance menu, and we're going to go ahead and output A, B, and C to one AND gate individually. And so the first one is going to be looking for, these are all going to be looking for X. So we're going to go ahead and get X from our controller sensor, and these are going to, this is going to plug into the B port of each of these AND gates. And now we actually want to quit with this last one, and then this first one is going to go ahead and output to our signal manipulator here. And now next we want to open up a submenu with our second AND gate, which is for the options. So the best way we can do this here is we're going to go ahead and turn this microchip into another microchip that looks like this. Basically, we're going to switch, we're going to put down another microchip in here, we're going to shove all this logic into there, and then we're going to go ahead and get another selector. So I'm going to get down another microchip, and this is going to be main, and I'm going to color it white, give it that icon, and now paused, I want to keep paused in our options menu. So we're not going to move that into our microchip here. Just these things that I'm selecting. So the selector, the keyframes, the text displayers, the doorway, the AND gates. Now one thing I want to do here is simplify our input, because as you can see, the microchip is getting pretty big. One way we can fix this is we can plop down a node, and each input for a single wire, you can see this X, it has 3 wire outputs, even though we only need one button, which is X. That's because it's going into 3 different places in this microchip. So if we just tell it to go to the node instead, we'll get a much cleaner input than we did previously. So this node is going to act as a basic way to tell where we actually want it to go. It's just something to tidy up the mic chip, basically. Alright, and now everything in here should technically work, except for our second option. And that's because we want the selector in here. So we're going to go ahead and get a selector. And by default, this selector is going to have our main menu open. And we don't want anything hooked up into the next and previous input. We only want to be able to select which menu we have open. So this AND gate here, we want it to go to the options menu, and the options menu is going to be output B. So the input on the left side of the selector acts as a basic set. So if we have an input here and it turns on, it'll set the selector to go to that. So we're telling it that we want to go to the options menu when this second AND gate activates. So we're going to go ahead and get out another microchip now, and this is going to be our options menu. And we're going to go ahead and give it the same style as the other microchips. And this is going to go ahead and power this one. But we're not going to do that right yet. We want to go ahead and get the actual display first. So we have the paused, and we want options in here. So one option I can think of just off the top of my head is like visual options or sound options. Sound is kind of difficult. I think master mixer, we can use this to set the volume. So by default 0% is not going to change anything. So we can make a slider in here that goes from 100 to like 110 or 125% maybe. And this mixer should change the volume of the entire game. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So a slider is kind of the intermediate or advanced UI options. So we're going to go ahead and move this master mixer over. And we're going to want to display that option on the screen. So that's the only option I want to work with. So we don't really need to do most of this. If you want to and you want to add more options, you can go ahead and do that. But I want to not do that. So what we want is another controller sensor. So go ahead and copy that over. Again, I'm only duplicating controller sensors because it's a lot more tidier. And you get like less crisscross wires everywhere. So if you want to, you can just use one singular controller sensor, but it causes just messiness. So we want to get that option now. So I'm gonna go ahead and copy the paused menu thing. And what we want is a slider. So we're gonna go ahead and have this be volume. And we're going to go ahead and get a semicolon after that to signify that, hey, this slider is for volume. So we're going to go ahead and what we want here is we want to make this not auto fit. And that's going to give us a very large box. And we also want to make it so the text is on the left side. So we're going to go to alignment, and then horizontal alignment, we're going to go ahead and do left. This is going to give us a little box here that we can play with. And so now that we have this displayed, we're going to go ahead and get the same selected style. So I think it was 50% one. Yeah, that's fine. All right. And we want circle to go back. So we're going to go ahead and hook that up to go to A for our controller sensor here first off. And then secondly, we want to display like a slider, and we also want a number. So I think we're going to want the number first. And we're also going to want a variable for this as well. So the volume is the same in everywhere in the scene. So we're going to go ahead and go over to our motherboard. And this is where our mixer logic is actually going to be as well, because we don't want this to be like stuck to the player and stuff like that. So we're going to move this master mixer over to the motherboard. And I'm going to go ahead and we're going to make a new variable. And like I said, we wanted the volume to go from like 0 to like 100, 125%. Give a little boost volume option. So we're going to go ahead and change the maximum value to, let's say, 125. We're only 30 minutes in. I mean, we're 30 minutes in, we haven't even done the customization stuff yet. Don't worry, we'll get there. I'm just going over the basic concepts first. So we're going to have this persistent dream as well. And the current value, we want the initial value to be 100. Because we want the volume to be at 100% by default. If you don't know about variables, I suggest watching my motherboard tutorial or a good game design video. And now that we have it at an initial value, we're going to be able to, we're just going to go ahead and output this current value into all the ports here of our master mixer. And actually, that's not going to do. We want to remap. We want to remap this so 100 is 0 and 125 is 25%. So I think if we just subtract 100 from this value, we should be fine. So we're going to go ahead and get a calculator from our gadgets menu, and we're going to go ahead and open the properties of that after we place it. And we're going to set B to 100. And our mode is going to be subtract. And this is just going to subtract 100 from our value. And the reason why we're doing this is because the volume percent here is done weirdly. It's like an additive amount rather than like a direct set for all the sounds. So 0% isn't like no volume, it's standard volume. Alright, so that should set the volume for our scene every time. Every scene this motherboard is in, this is going to set the volume. Alright, so now over here, we want to be able to get the volume, and we want to be able to modify the volume. And the reason why we're getting the volume is so we can, you know, actually display the number in the slider. So we're going to go ahead and get, and we want to get the volume. So we're using a variable modifier, which is in your logic and processing section of your gadgets menu, but we also forgot to set this variable's name. That's the most important part, is you actually have to name your variables in order for them to show up and work. So yeah, that was a mistake on my end. Alright, we got volume, and we set the mode of this variable modifier to get, so the output of this is going to be whatever volume is, and by default it's 100. So we're going to go ahead and get a number displayer from our output, or movers and output section of our gadgets menu. It is, I believe, it's like second to last, basically. And this variable modifier output is going to go into our number range of our number displayer. And we don't want a text box or a border on this. We just want the text. And that should technically display it. So we're going to display it on the left here. So what we want is we're going to go ahead and change the sort order to 2, and this is going to keep the volume, like number, above this box here. I'm going to go ahead and move this in. And we want to change the alignment here to middle. We're going to do left horizontal alignment. Vertical alignment is going to be middle. And this is going to make it so it doesn't overflow onto the text, or it doesn't overflow onto the slider itself. Alright, so now we have this level here. And the slider that I'm talking about is basically we're making a slider out of text displayers. So what we want for a slider is we want a black line, or it can be any colored line you want, but basically we need a line, and we need a like actual slider dealie. So we're gonna go ahead and we want to go to text box properties. I mean, we want to get rid of the border because we just want this box here, and we're gonna change this to not auto fit. And in order for a text displayer to actually display, you need any text in it, and that includes a space. So on the text, enter text on the text properties, just put in a space. Alright, now that we have this, we want to color the box itself black. And then we want to make it up into a line, so just make it ultra thin. You can make it even smaller by shrinking it with the scale. And this, we also want sort order to be 2, so it's on top of the volume thing. And we're going to go ahead and open up the number displayer and the text displayer as well, so we get this actual size and position right. And we're going to go ahead and make this to about the size that we have in here in the rest of the display box, and we're going to move this about into the middle. And once you have it to your liking, you might have a little bit of difficulty selecting it once you place it, because that's how text box be, but we're going to have this line here, and now we want to animate a bar over this so we can actually get a display going to represent how high our volume is. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to copy it, and we're going to go ahead and make this a little like slider dealie. That looks good to me, and that's fine. Alright. So now we want to animate it to go up and down depending on our volume level. So we're going to go ahead and get a timeline from our animate menu in our assembly menu. And we want this to just sustain. That's fine. And we're going to go open this up, and we're going to go from 0 to 5 seconds. So go ahead and place a keyframe at 0 and place a keyframe at 5. Go ahead and set the blend mode to linear with L1 and X between the keyframes. First keyframe, we're going to go ahead and open up the properties of this text displayer here, both of them, so we can see it. And I'm going to go ahead and turn on precise move in our guides menu. And we're going to go ahead and move the slider all the way to the left. And then for the next keyframe, you want to move it all the way to the right. So now we're going to get a nice slide between it. And we're going to go ahead and change the timeline so its length is only our 2 keyframes here. We're going to keep this open for now. And then we want to get a calculator out from our logic and processing section of our gadgets menu. And we want to get our current volume and divide it by our max volume to get a value between 0 and 1. And that's going to be the position of our timeline's playhead. So that's what actually animates the scroll of the little dealio there. So we're going to go ahead and get this. We're going to output the variable modifier value to A of this calculator. We're going to open up properties. We're going to divide. And we want to divide by 125. Because that is our maximum value for volume. And then the output of this calculator is going to go into our playhead position, which is the very bottom of the playhead when you have the timeline open. I don't know why, but it's not the same as playhead position in the properties panel of the timeline, which is very unfortunate. Alright, and now you can actually see that it is on the line here. And when we get the logic to change it, which we're going to do in a second here, you'll actually be able to see it move. So let's go ahead and do that. So we want left and right on the D-pad to change the value, so that's pretty easy. What we're going to do is we're going to get a combiner from our gadgets menu, the logic and processing section. And this is going to give us a positive value and a negative value. And we're going to open up the controller sensor, and we're going to go to page 3, and we're going to get the left button and right button output. And this is the left button goes to negative, and the right button goes to positive of our combiner. So what this is going to do is it's going to create a value for us to add to the volume. So we're going to go ahead and get a variable modifier out, and we're going to open up properties. We want the variable name to be volume. We're going to go ahead and add, and we're going to do continuously while powered. And what we want to do is we're going to the combiner output, we're going to go ahead and plug into the operation value. So that's going to go ahead and add the value to the positive and negative value of our D-pad onto the volume, which is going to change our volume. So now that we have that, the last thing is to plug in output B into the options. So now we have a sub-menu in this menu, which is our pause menu. And then next we're going to go ahead and go over the customization logic. Alright, so I'm going to go in play mode, open our menu, we're going to go open the options menu, and you can see with the left D-pad, it moves the slider up. Left D-pad moves it down, right D-pad moves it up. And you can see it animates, and it's going to the position that we want it to be, depending on the volume. Alright. Circle goes to the previous previous X quits. I'm going to go ahead and go back, because I don't want to quit. And then X on unpauses. And you can also use the touchpad, the unpause at this moment. If you don't want the touchpad to unpause, then I would probably recommend using an AND gate here with a NOT gate attached to the signal manipulator. You should be able to figure that out. If you can't, then you should probably watch the in-game tutorials first. Alright, now we want to do the customization menu. So we're going to go ahead and get another microchip out. And this is going to be a little bit more complicated. So it's going to have more options because I want to basically a list of things that you can choose from. We already did the slider, but we're going to need sliders for the color of the hair and color of the, color of the, why can't I think right? Color of the eyes, yep, there it is. So first off, we don't want to be able to move around as the player when we're customizing. We're customizing because we want to activate a camera, and that camera is going to be focused in a very specific position, so we can see this head, and we can also, customize. So we're going to go and place a switch down from our sensors and input section of our gadgets menu, next to our base controller sensor. We're going to open up the controller sensor's properties. We're going to go to important properties, and we're going to go ahead and output from the switch into the disable controls ports here. And you can do this with a variable if you want. You can do it with a lot of things. I'm using switch so we can animate it, and that's going to make things a little bit easier on us. So this new microchip in our pause menu, and we're going to name this new microchip customization. And we also want to make it so we can actually switch between the inputs here. So L1 and R1. Yeah, since we have a submenu in here, that's what we want. We're probably going to want to do it from here as well, even though we don't have a submenu. So I'm going to go ahead and get the same. I'm going to copy the controller sensor because we need it. And we're going to have a lot of options in here. So we want to get a camera first, because that's the first thing we want to do. So go ahead and get the camera out from the cameras section of your gadgets menu. I think it's cameras and lighting. Yep. And we're gonna go. You can go ahead and place this however you want. I'm gonna do something like, I'm gonna narrow the FOV. No, widen it. Yeah. Yeah, widening it gets us a flatter image. So I'm gonna widen it, and then you're gonna go ahead and place it so their head is in the upper left corner. And I want their head to have like a background on it. So we're gonna get another text displayer out. I think we're gonna copy the pause one because I'm a bit lazy. And gonna change the text to be space, and we want autofit to turn off. And we want this to be in the scene, actually, because we want the head to have this background, and we want to face the camera. So this way, we'll always be looking at the camera, no matter what. And I want like a square. A square. There we go. All right. I'm gonna shrink it a little bit. It's kind of hard to see with the option in the way. Alright, that looks good to me. I hate that text displayers are so bulky. I wish they were smaller. Alright, and now that we have that, we're probably gonna go ahead and do the sliders now. And we want to be able to select things with our D-pad. So we want another selector in here, and this is gonna do the same animation thing. And we're gonna get our options displayed first. So I'm gonna go ahead and get an option. I need the pause menu one again. First one is going to be eye color. The next one is going to be, or eye color is a bit too specific. We only set up hue, so we're going to do eye hue. And we're going to do hair hue. And I want to line these up a bit better with what we have. So I'm gonna go ahead and play time. Open up both these. And then we're gonna try to get this set up properly. I'm gonna custom this for the horizontal alignment. One thing I think may be a bug is we aren't getting accurate placement of these text boxes. You see it zooms in on the text, even though it really shouldn't be. Because if we actually play the game, the display is going to be a lot different. I think it wasn't like this before, but I'm not entirely sure. So we're going to have to test it out. Check if I'm right or not. Which is a bit unfortunate, because I'd rather this just be really simple to work with, but it's not. Oh, and we have to turn off autofit again, and we want to change the horizontal alignment for both of these to be left. It's because these are sliders. And that one's a bit too big. Okay, so if we go ahead and play, you can see the positioning is like way different than what it was in edit mode. Because if we edit this, you can see it's zoomed in like this. That is just completely off from what it should be. So that's an unfortunate bug. Really unfortunate. It's almost impossible to set up things with a modified camera, so I think we're not going to do the field of view, unfortunately, which kind of makes things a little bit more difficult to get positioned in the way we want it. I'm going to do this instead. And let's see here. Select, we want to select it. That should look better. Yes. Although you aren't standing up straight, but hey, what can we do about it? There's not much we can do about it because of that glitch, unfortunately. And of course, I always forget about that. Deselects it. Okay. So we have got eye hue, and we have hair hue, and why is it doing that? I want to do local space. There we go. That seems a bit small to me. Let's try to extend this out a little bit. And now that we have these two set up, it's going to be a little bit easier to position stuff, because we're going to be able to go off this instead of that box. So now we got to set up two sliders. So what I'm going to do is probably make it a microtrip, and then yeah, that's gonna be a lot of work. I think I might, excuse me, I think I might just you know, fast forward through this because we already did the slider. So I will see you on the other side. Alright, so now we got the slider visuals set up for the eye hue and the hair hue. It took quite a while to set up. It was frustrating, but hey, we got it now. So we're going to do the same like highlight thing for these as we did. Man, text displayers sure are buggy. They really need some work. The precise move and the grid was like all over the place with them. So now we want to do the same highlighting thing when they're selected, but we want to do a little bit differently because we also want the logic for actually sliding them and stuff like that. So we're gonna go ahead and open up microchip in here. Open up a new microchip, and this is gonna be for controlling it. And so we want the, so we're gonna have our own controller sensor in here. And we're also going to have, let's see here, we want to make it so you have to select it first, so you can move left and right freely between options, like, because there is plenty of room on the screen here on the right side, but we're going to run out of options here quickly, I think, unless we just do sliders. And I don't want to just do sliders, so yeah. So let's see here. I mean, we could just do sliders. There's also, we could also just display. I could really just leave it up to you at this point. I mean, I feel like we've gone over plenty of stuff, but I want to get this functional at least on camera, so you know. Actually say we have this, and then so I feel like we're just gonna have it like slide left and right, and no left and right like options. Like if you want to do left and right options, instead of like having the up and down selected, you'd have like a row basically. I can show an example of that. In fact, I think I might do that now. So I'm going to rename this to, let's see, this is just UI tutorial after. Now, UI can get really complicated, so what I'm going to show you is going to be a little bit hard to understand, but it's it just takes so much time to do this. So doing it in a tutorial, if I wanted to like remake this entire menu, it would take forever to explain it. Couldn't just find it. here it is. So, you may have seen this. This is part of a project I'm working on. And this is the pause menu I have here. It's the same concept, basically. We're able to switch between menus with L1 and R1. There aren't any sub-menus in this, so that's something to think of. But I also output X as a wireless transmitter instead of just per each. So the one that I want to focus on is our magic menu here. And I have our title and then background elements in here. That's stuff that's commonly used between each menu basically, or changed slightly. Then in here I have a combiner for up and down and left and right. This one's left, right, this one's up and down, and then in here you can see it gets crazy. So this is why I don't want to do left and right options. So each of these is an option on the screen. So we have upper left, and then as you can see it's pretty crazy. So you'd have to organize things. This is our up and down selector, I think. Yeah. And this is left and right. So what I'm doing here is I'm combining the left and right signal into a combiner. So we get a value, a fat wire. And then I'm sending this fat wire, since the number is always the same, since this is a grid, basically, we're able to cheat it a little bit. And this wire is being sent through 4 different nodes, because there's 4 Y layers. 1, 2, 3, 4. And this node is basically just an AND gate, but it sends through the actual signal when it's powered on, rather than a multiplied signal. And then this selector is the up and down selector, and it actually selects which node it passes through. And then this is just a splitter, but with one option removed, basically. It splits it to get these values. There's extra values when you do player data, but I needed specifically 5 options, so this is just a splitter to microchip, basically. This outputs to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And in here, it's different, like the selection highlights it, as we did previously. And also, it lets you know, it turns on different text displays, like descriptions, depending on what you're selecting. And then this is like the actual item on the screen, and it only shows up if we have the water ball unlocked. So I can actually show how this works here. Nothing's going to be unlocked, but as you can see, we can select up and down and left and right. If you still didn't have, or if you weren't able to understand that, then go ahead and make a comment. I can probably help you, or I can probably make a part 2 of this tutorial, because we're already past an hour, and I feel like if we were to make something like that, it would take probably another hour. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and make this work first, and then we're gonna go ahead and end off this tutorial. So we're back in this scene here. I have this microchip for editing the eye hue, and we just want to get the left and right value and combine it again. And left is negative, right is positive, and then we're getting the variable modifier. And we're adding continuously while powered. The output of the combiner goes into the operation value, and then this variable name is going to be, this is the eye color, and then we're going to go ahead and duplicate this. B is going to be in here, and this is for the hair color. And we're also going to have a keyframe in here, in each of these, to modify the hue, not the hue, but the text box brightness and the opacity. So we have 20%, And by default, keyframes are turned off, but when this is open, like when this microchip is on, we want this keyframe on. So you can go ahead and power it on, and this is the second one. So the hair hue, we want to raise the brightness up by 1, increase the opacity by 40%, and the microchip here, we'll do the same thing, but for eye hue. Alright, and we're going to have that turn on, and now you should just need to hook up this controller sensor here. So up and down. Down is next, up is previous, and then we want the L and R to switch between the menus also. So let's see here. L1 goes to the previous, and then R1 goes to the next. Doesn't really matter because we only have 2 menus, but hey. Alright, now this should work. Well, don't think I have this hooked up properly. Yeah, it's not plugged in. What? That was weird. Alright, B. There we go. Open it, and then R1 goes to the next menu. L1 goes to the previous. So, eye hue, we can change that. You can see our eye color is changing. Maybe difficult to see it, but it is changing. And then hair hue is the same. Let's make it so we have blue hair or something like that. Something crazy. Got blue hair now. Let's get some blue eyes going. Circle doesn't close the menu from here. There we go. And that's basic menus, basically. Some UI. Like I said, if you want to do more advanced stuff, like, you probably need just add some selectors in. Like, for example, we can have a selector in here, another selector for a third option. Do this. Have this output to the selector, and also output to a title, like for example, just head. And we'll bring this down a bit. Let me turn on that precise move. And we got head, and let's have this like checkboxes or something. I guess I'll try to do this and as quickly as possible, so forgive me if I don't explain it as well. So we're gonna make this have 3. The selector have 3 because you know we have 3 heads we set up in our previous tutorial. The keyframe out, do the same selection stuff, and shrink it down. And this is going to be like checkbox thing. So probably want... I'm not sure if we have anything that could depict that easily. Let's see. Let me check the online menu, or the online tool thing. It would be indreams.me, and then if we go on to documents, I think, no, it's user guide, dream icons. Let's see here, what can we do for like an on-off toggle thing? What would be easy to get that? Let's see. Well, there's a UI circle. Ah, here we go. UI cross hollow and then UI cross circled. So, we'd probably want UI cross circled or UI cross hollow for being unselected, and then UI cross would be selected, so, or not selected but toggled. So we have UI cross, and then we'd want probably to put this in a microchip to make it a bit easier to manage, because the damn text displayers are so big. And we're gonna go ahead and get a NOT gate in here. And we want another text displayer, and this is going to be UI cross circled. So that's filled in. And this NOT gate is going to go ahead and go into here. And this is going to be, you want to get the value of the head, and let's say the head is like this is 0 head, so we want to get the variable modifier. We're going to go ahead and do customize head. We're going to get, and we're going to calculator out, and we're going to do equals 0, because 0 is the first option, and this is the first cross. And this result is going to go into the first text displayer as well as the NOT gate, and the NOT gate is hooked up in the second one. So if it, well, we want to reverse this actually. So the NOT gate is hooked up to the first one, because that's unselected, and the equals, if it is the first one, we want it blacked in. Alright? So now we got this set up, and we want to make it so when we are on A in the selector, this is highlighted, so we want both of these highlighted. So we're going to change the brightness to 1% and then the opacity to 40. And we would copy this twice, basically. 1, 2, and we're going to have to change the calculators in both of these, and we also want to change the, we want to delete the animations for both of these. I think, yeah, we want to delete the animations from the actual selection one as well, because we copied the head text box, which carried the recording data from this keyframe, which is the selecting the head, basically. Alright, and A is going to go ahead and plug into that first keyframe, then we want another keyframe and another one. Next keyframe does the same, 1%, 40% on the next. Stop recording. Last microchip. Again, I'm sorry if I'm going too quick here. I just feel like the tutorial's been drawn out long enough. Alright, B and C. Because UI is really up entirely to the creator of the game. Like, if you want something specific, you have to design it specific for that. So if there's any particular use cases that you want, I could probably make a part 2. That is, if you're watching this far. I mean, it is about an hour or so. I don't know, I probably cut some footage or sped through it, so it might be earlier than an hour. I still think it's an hour, though. Alright, so next we would need the actual modification thing. So what we would want is a... Well, we actually need to move these displayers as well. So I'm gonna have to move one of them. Of course, that's not gonna work. Alright, that looks good to me. And then we want to move the other one over. Here we go. And then the third one as well. Alright. And, of course, this one, we need to actually be able to change between the selections. We need the D-pad controls for that. Left is previous, right is next. And then we want to get a node in here. Two of them, actually. Can't believe I didn't do this properly. We want a variable modifier, and we're going to go ahead and set the head value to 0 for this case. And we need an AND gate. That's going to be the selected and the X button. That's going to go ahead and go into a variable modifier. And we're going to copy this onto our other two microchips that we made. You should really just do this all at once, but I was kind of rushing, so I forgot about it. Didn't actually think I was going to get it to function. Alright, gonna get these on here, and then get these on here. And then we want this one to be 1. And then this one is 2. And then let's check if our calculator is set up correctly. No. This one needs to be 2. And this one needs to be 2. Or no, 1. Yeah. Alright. And then, of course, X. Alright, now that should be another option for us. Might be horribly malformed, I don't know. No, that works pretty well to me. Other than, you know, the person going up and down. I don't know why hair hue is lighting up. Shouldn't be. Why is that happening? Ah. Great, now I gotta delete all these. Alright. There we go. I guess one last thing is when this menu is turned on, we don't want to be able to move around. So we're going to go ahead and get a keyframe out. And it's going to turn on that switch from earlier. And this signal is going to go from the signal manipulator on our base microchip. It's going to go into that keyframe. Alright, now we can open up. And when we open up the menu, we can't control the player anymore, but the camera is unfortunately not stationary. That's kind of a glitch, I guess, with the actual game, because we have pause controls turned on, but that doesn't affect the camera. But hey, at least it works now. And select between heads. And of course you'd probably want to do facial hair maybe. And if you don't want to do these cross symbols, you could extend these out to like larger squares and have them in the scene and have like the model display on top of it. You just have to set up the camera and the items correctly. And you'd probably want to why can't I think of the word? You'd probably want to make it so the actual models were attached to the player, like they were on the play, like in the group, same group, so it follows the movement and everything like that. Alright, well, I feel like that should be a decent amount of explanation for menus. Again, if you have anything specific you want to see in menus and UI, go ahead and put in the comments. If you have any questions about that last bit that I did here with the left and right and the toggles, let me know, because I did breeze through that section pretty quickly. I am sorry about that. It is a lot to explain, and I didn't want to be stuck here all night recording. So yeah, if you want to see a part 2, let me know. If you want to see anything specific, any other tutorials, not even UI related, let me know. So yeah, thank you everyone. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Also, I got a Patreon now. You probably heard about it by now, I don't know. If you watched this far into the video, you probably heard about it. But yeah, thank you. Have a nice day. Bye everyone. Bye.